One of the things you've always talked about is how important it is to care for your people, to motivate them, and to kind of compliment you. The first time we had a private meal together and meeting, I was pretty nervous. I was with John Maxwell, who's a hero, and you leaned in with a big smile and said something like, "How can I add value to your life, Craig?" and you just from the very beginning, you're with a guy who was a young developing leader, and you were trying to give and showed how much you cared. You always help value the person with you. The quote that you say that I like so much is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Someone might say, well, leadership is business. You have to be business and to get results. You have to care about objectives more than people. How would you respond to that?
Well, my response would be that I think leaders get in trouble when they quit caring for their people. There's a very fine line, as you know, between manipulating people and motivating people. And I think manipulation is always wrong, because manipulation is where I move people for personal advantage. And so to me, that quote is so important because it's a safeguard. It's a safeguard in my life to keep me from crossing that line, which we all have crossed that line. I've crossed that line before, where all of a sudden I thought, no, wait a minute, I just led that meeting and I came out as the winner. I'm not sure they did, but I did. And when I say that leaders see more than others see and leaders see before others see, I can tell you, once you know that to be true, that puts a great responsibility on me as a leader to make sure that I never use that more and before for my advantage to the people's disadvantage. And so what's the balance? What's the checkmate on that? Well, it's very simple. You just care for people, love for people, and I say when you stop loving people, really do them a favor, stop leading them, because the moment that I stop caring for you as a person, then I can promise you the motives of my leadership will go south very quick.
Right.
They just do.
What advice would you give, John, to someone who's maybe newer in their leadership and they say, okay, I do care for people, but I don't know how to express it? How does a caring leader show that she or he cares in a
great
leadership
question.
environment?
I always share that what you do, and this is by the way, that question you just asked is a very good question, because there are a lot of people who really do care, but they don't emote very well, and they're not visual very well, and so it's not that they lack it; it's just that they have never been able to present it. And so what I always share with them is, if that's your situation, sit down with your people and say, "No, let me share with you the good news and the bad news. The good news is I really care for you, but let me tell you what the bad news is: I don't show it well." So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you know how I show it. I don't show it because I'm not bubbly and I'm not highly affirmative and I don't come around. I'm not like a cheerleader. But there are two or three things that I do that really show that I care for you. One is that I always respect you. And so you lay out whatever those things are and you just give them what I call those care markers, so that when they're following you, they don't need that emotional affirmation, because they know that's not how you give it, but it doesn't matter because you've already shown them the way that you care. And I think that one of the greatest weaknesses that we have as leaders many times is that we take our areas that are difficult for us and we don't sit down with our people and say, "No, this is very difficult for me. So I need you to help me. And I'm going to share with you why it's difficult. I'm going to share with you how you can understand it. And then I want you to also come in and say, "John, maybe this would help. And would you help me?" I think great leadership always is vulnerable and open and willing to be improved, and has not only an open door policy, but has an open ear policy, an open heart policy. And I find people then migrate to that. I mean, all of a sudden they become your allies. They become some of the best help I've ever had is because I've sat down with my team and just said, "I'm not really good here. So help me."
Yeah. Well, I like that. Now, I honestly have never thought about that, just sitting down with someone and saying, maybe I'm not as expressive. There might be some introverts right now.
Absolutely.
Or some people that they're not the loud person, the party person in the room, but they can say, what I want you to know is, here's how I do show that I care for you. And that is that, I give you feedback, or, I'll I don't give you negative feedback, meaning I'm going to tell you if I do like it or something. And so you can, kind of clearly define, here's how. And so, I served under a leader, John, that I never quite knew. And it took me years to figure him out. I never knew if I was doing great or not because he didn't show it. But his style of affirmation was so different. Had he had explained it to me that this was a win, then I probably would have felt a lot more cared for earlier in the partnership. So
I had a mentor, Charles Blair, who many, many years ago said, John, always have an understanding so there's not a misunderstanding.
Right.
And it was just very helpful to me. And I asked him to explain that. He said, it's just very simple. He said, never assume, never assume, which is kind of like the mother of all leadership mess ups. Just so be vulnerable, ask questions, find out where they are, help them find out where you are, and then take off together.